Hi guys, welcome back to the read aloud of our book, Sideways Stories from Wayside School. We have 2 chapters left, and since it's the last day of the week, I'm going to go ahead and read them both today and finish our book up. So today is chapter 29, which is Stephen. Here's a kind of scary picture. You might remember who this is when we start to read it. You might go, oh, I remember this story now. Here is Stephen. Stephen had green hair. He had purple ears and a blue face. He wore his sister's pink dancing shoes and green leotards. The leotards matched his hair. He was all dressed up as a goblin for Mrs. Jewls' Halloween party. But unfortunately, it wasn't Halloween. "Ha ha ha, you look silly," said Jason. Jason was Stephen's best friend. "Well, so do you," said Stephen. "Boy, are you dumb," said Jenny. "Halloween is on Sunday. Today is only Friday." "You're the one who's dumb," said Stephen. "Ha ha ha, you'd probably come to school on Sunday. Mrs. Jewls said we'd have the party today." But none of the other children wore costumes, only Stephen. "All right, class," said Mrs. Jewls. "It is time for our Halloween party." "See," said Stephen. Mrs. Jewls gave each child a cookie that looked like an orange witch with a black hat. She laughed when she saw Stephen and forgot to give him one. Stephen didn't ask for it. He was afraid that she'd laugh again. The children finished their cookies in less than 30 seconds. "All right, class," said Mrs. Jewls. "The party is over. We have a lot of work to do." Stephen felt like a fool. The party lasted less than a minute, and he had to spend the rest of the day wearing his stupid goblin suit. "Look, Stephen's wearing his sister's leotards," laughed Dana. "They're green, just like his hair," said Fatso. Everybody laughed. Mrs. Jewls began the arithmetic lesson. She wrote on the blackboard, 2 plus 2 equals 5. "That's wrong," Joy shouted. Mrs. Jewls tried again. 2 plus 2 equals 3. That wasn't right either. She added 2 and 2 again and got 43. It was useless. No matter how hard she tried, she could not get 2 plus 2 to equal 4. "I don't understand it," she said. "They've always equaled 4 before." Suddenly she screamed, "Ah!" The chalk turned into a squiggling worm. She dropped it on her foot. Then all the lights went out and the blackboard lit up like a movie screen. A woman appeared on the screen. She had a long tongue and pointed ears. She stepped off the screen and into the classroom. It was the ghost of Mrs. Gorf, or Mrs. Gorf from the very beginning. Mrs. Gorf ran her fingernails across the blackboard. "Trick or treat, you rotten kids," she said. "Now I'll get even with every one of you. Where's Todd?" "Who is that?" asked Mrs. Jewls. "Mrs. Gorf," said Damien. "Who's Mrs. Gorf?" asked Mrs. Jewls. "She was the meanest teacher we ever had," said Rondi. "Well, what happened to her?" asked Mrs. Jewls. "Louis ate her," said Jason. Remember, he ate the apple. "Well, I'm not going to allow this," said Mrs. Jewls. "Get out of my classroom," she demanded. "It's Halloween, sweet teacher," said Mrs. Gorf. "Ghosts can go anywhere they like. I've come for a little class reunion." "Oh, but it isn't Halloween," said Mrs. Jewls. "Halloween is still 2 days away." "I know," said Mrs. Gorf, "but Halloween falls on Sunday this year, so we are celebrating it on the Friday before." Stephen leapt up from his seat. "See, I was right," he said. "Today is the day we celebrate it. The Friday before. Mrs. Gorf proved it." He ran up to Mrs. Gorf. "They all laughed at me and made me feel stupid because I was the only one who got dressed up. But they were the ones who were wrong. You and I are right." He put his arms around Mrs. Gorf and hugged her. Mrs. Gorf gasped and disappeared. The lights came back on. Mrs. Jules picked up the piece of chalk from the floor. She wrote on the blackboard, 2 plus 2 equals 4. That's good, she said. When 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 4, anything can happen. All the children who had laughed at Stephen now called him a hero, but they told him to change his silly costume. So at lunch, Stephen went home, washed up and changed. He came back wearing his blue jeans and a polo shirt. Of course, his hair was still green. It always was. And that was the chapter of Stephen who saved us from the ghost of Mrs. Gorf. All right, last chapter, chapter 30. Lewis, remember our yard teacher Lewis? Here he is. Let's find out about Lewis. Lewis had a red face and a mustache of many colors. He was the yard teacher at Wayside School. He's kind of like the PE recess teacher. It was his job to see that the children didn't have too much fun during lunch and recess. And if you haven't already guessed, he is the one who wrote this book. There you go. On June 10th, there was a blizzard. June, think about that. Blizzards are snowstorms. Lewis was afraid that the children would have too much fun, so nobody was allowed outside. Class, said Mrs. Jules, after you finish your lunch today, come back up to the classroom. You are not allowed outside. The children all went to the lunchroom. Miss Mush made her tuna surprise. They looked at it, then hurried back up the stairs. There was nothing to do. Now, class, said Mrs. Jules, I know that you are all bored, but I have a special surprise for you. Well, I hope it's better than the tuna surprise, said Mauricia. Mrs. Jules continued, Lewis is going to come up and entertain us. He will tell us a story. Now I want you all to be on your best behavior. When Lewis walked in, all the children booed. Woo, boo! Are you going to tell us a story? Asked Phoebe. Yes, said Lewis. Well, it better be a good one, Phoebe warned. It better be better than the tuna surprise, said Butterfingers. I thought the tuna surprise was good, said Lewis. You'd eat dirt if they put enough ketchup on it, said Mac. Remember Mac was Nancy. Hey, everybody, be quiet, said Todd. Let him tell the story. Not too loud, Lewis, said Sherry. I'm trying to get some sleep. Lewis sat in the middle of the room, and all the children gathered round. Lewis began his story. This is a story about a school very much like this one. But before we get started, there is something you ought to know so that you don't get confused. In this school, every classroom is on the same story. Which one is the 18th? Asked Jenny. Oh, no, said Lewis. They are all on the ground. The school is only 1 story high. Kind of like our wing at Mills. Not much of a school, laughed Damien. Lewis continued. Now, you might think the children there are strange and silly. That is probably true. However, when I told them the stories about you, they thought you were strange and silly. Us? Answered the children. How are we strange? I am normal, said Stephen, aren't I? As normal as I am, Joe assured him. The children at that school must be crazy, said Leslie. Real Lulus, Mauricia agreed. Tell us about them, Lewis, Phoebe demanded. Well, for one thing, Lewis said, none of these children have ever turned into an apple. Well, that's silly, said Dee Dee. Everybody's been turned into an apple. It's part of growing up. Lewis continued. Dead rats don't walk into their classrooms wearing raincoats. Well, what do they wear, tuxedos? Asked Todd. And girls never try to sell their toes, Lewis added. Well, no wonder, said Leslie. At today's prices? Lewis continued. They don't trade names or read upside down. They don't turn mosquito bites into numbers. They don't count the hairs on their heads. The walls don't laugh. And 2 plus 2 always equals 4. How horrible, said Damien. That's not the worst of it, said Lewis. They have never tasted Mauricia ice cream. A hush fell over the classroom. Mrs. Jules, I'm scared, said Allison. Is there really a school like that? Of course not, said Mrs. Jules. Louis was just telling a story. It was a good story, said Leslie. I thought it was stupid, said Kathy. Well, I liked it, said Rondi. It was funny. Mrs. Jules said, Louis, it was a very entertaining story, but we don't really go in for fairy tales here. I'm trying to teach my class the truth. That's all right, said Louis. I have to go down to room 29 now and tell them a story. He started out the door. Class, said Mrs. Jules, let's all thank Louis for his wonderful story. Everybody booed. And that is the end of our Wayside story. Remember at the beginning how he started to tell us about this class? And so here at the end, he was telling them about us. No students, possibly. I hope you enjoyed these fun stories of Sideways Stories from Wayside School. We'll be starting a new chapter book really soon. I look forward to seeing you.